Sultan Qaboos University, the university we are proud of, the university that has a heritage of the best in Oman. Listening to something and wondering when it is going to come on. This is usually, you can take off your strips now. This is usually what happens to my students. They are with the sighted students. It's a big class. I've got about 20, out of which I have 3 to 9, ranging any number of visually impaired students. One of the biggest challenges that I faced was understanding the individual learning style, understanding how to connect with them, how to make them feel included in the mainstream classroom. Let me begin with the beginning of the journey. Oman, where I come from, I teach at the Sultan Qaboos University, and it is almost 27 years old now. Oman signed the UN Convention in 2008 about the disability law and fixed a quota of employment at 2%. We have 90,000 people with disabilities as a census of 2011, out of which we have 24,000 visually impaired between the age of 18 and 64 years. We have special school for the blind, but then higher education is where the journey becomes different for them, because at the foundation course at the English Language Center, where we offer credit courses and foundation courses, we have a number of students, like our student number is 6,000 or sometimes 4,500 students at the foundation level, and we have a faculty of about 200 teachers. We deal with large numbers, and we offer more than 150 programs. The first question that we faced when it came to integrating or not integrating the blind students in mainstream classroom. They used to study separately, but now we have just 2 or 3 students some year coming to university, and we integrate them. Sometimes they have like about 9 or 10 students. We have never crossed the number more than 19. The big question we faced was, if we integrate, how do we manage? In 2011, integration was a better choice for the following reasons. A real-life experience for the students in a real-world situation. We found that we had to bring them to the mainstream classroom to better equip them with social skills that are required outside the 4 walls in real life. Up till now, they have just been with the tutor and the other blind students. Now we tell them, you study like the rest. More opportunities for interaction, and we also saw on the other hand that we wanted to change the typical mindset of the sighted people, that the visually challenged students cannot perform independently and normally. There was this question of social acceptance where employability was a concern. We had employers who would say 2-person quota for the blind, but how do we know that they are competent enough to do the job? So we wanted to change the typical public response to blindness by demonstrating that blind persons are persons first and blind next. Concern for me as a teacher was that I was just holding a normal, regular master's in English language degree, English language teaching degree, and I didn't know how to handle visually impaired students in the classroom. There was no such formal training, only we were said that there is this special lab now being put up, very nascent. Our English Language Center has a special technician and a lab to cater to the materials. But we were as near to it as the technician. There were all sorts of questions in our mind, especially a provision of materials and time. We had this lovely book with a video CD with lots of colors and pictures and vocabulary that every normal student would be using. While it was very easy to hand over the books to the mainstream students, we struggled with creating Braille copies because Braille printers have this thick paper on which it takes a while to produce the material. And what happened was each unit would be a bulk of paper. After we did that, and when we handed these out to the students, we also realized that some of them did not know Braille, because in their particular institution they were using Braille Sense or a laptop to do their reading. So basically they were not reading by the sense of touch, they were listening to what was being read, like a Google Speak. And student preferences differed. We realized that somebody wanted a Braille copy as a must. Some said we want the Braille Sense. Oh, it's coming on now, sorry. Some of them wanted a laptop, and some of them only felt comfortable with a peer tutor. We have the College of Education degree students who assist the visually impaired students during the lectures and after college hours, just with their regular homework and their additional work. And some of them insisted on having the peer tutor. So I realized that even if you had just 3 non-sighted students in the class, all 3 preferred something different. So here I was telling the students, watch the video, turn to page number 92, and there was somebody on the Braille, somebody on the Braille Sense, and somebody on the laptop. And it's disheartening that you realize that the sighted students are not really angels. They get impatient, they don't want to wait, and I had a case when one of the students wanted to simply opt out of my section, my class, because she wanted a normal class. She had very good capability, higher grasping power, and she would become impatient about just about everything. This was a learning experience about me. And the other learning experience that I had was the fear, the doubts, and the apprehensions of the visually impaired students. I had a case, a student called Ali, who would refuse to enter my classroom. Some of these students have psychosomatic disorders also. Some of them have more than one physical challenge. They're not just blind, they have problems with hearing as well. And the first semester he was with a teacher he got very comfortable with. The moment they said, now line 1026, you have a different teacher, he refused to enter the classroom. He would stand outside my classroom and demand to go back to Miss Vedad, the other teacher. It took us several phone calls to the mother and talking to him, sending him to counseling and telling him that this change is inevitable. Over 3 weeks when we worked with him, and when I used to greet him specially, I would make him sit down, I would talk to him, he would not respond. It would be like a stone. He would actually try to push me away if I tried to say hello. It can be very disconcerting as a teacher because you want to help them and your help is not accepted. But over a period of 3 weeks, when I learned that he loved to sing in class, I would ask him to sing first. And then I would applaud and the rest of the class would applaud. And then slowly I got him into this change, this transition. And we explained to him that when you go out in the real world, there's going to be change. There are going to be different people. You cannot say, I won't do it because it's not Miss Vedad. He settled, but the first 3 weeks going inside the classroom, getting Ali to settle down was a task. And then I had Mariam, a sighted student. I sort of briefly mentioned this student right in the first week. She saw the visually impaired students and walked out. She said, I want a normal class, I'm not sitting here. We just had to go by her wish and we changed her section. And then I had Thuraya, the missing student, a sighted student, but she'll come in 1 hour late. She may not turn up at all. And this is where I used a little bit of blackmail. I made sure she was responsible for one of the non-sighted students. And I said, if you don't come to class, what is Shuvena going to do? Shuvena was waiting for you. And it's so turned about that there is not interdependence from the non-sighted students on the sighted students, but it works both ways. I had students, the phone-addicted students, Muhammad, Ahmad, Ishaq, every single minute their phone would ring or there would be a WhatsApp and tuck. Initially I used to collect their phones. Didn't work much because they'd have a second one, a third one in the pocket. But later on, when the vocabulary quiz results were out, they realized that the non-sighted students had almost scored full marks and they hadn't. So I showed them the scores and I said, if they can do it, do you have any excuse? And that was when they really turned over a new leaf. They felt so terrible. Out of the 3, at least one of them, I can genuinely vouch that he became more sincere than he was. Then I had very interesting case of Habiba's hello. What I learned from that I can never forget. The first lecture, the lecture got over, and then I always spend 5 or 10 minutes with the blind students asking them if everything is okay. And she said, "Teacher, I want to see you." And I was very surprised. I mean, how can she say I want to see you? So I said, "Yeah, here I am." "Okay." So she said, "No, I want to see you." Then she came closer and she touched me. And then I said, "Okay, thank you." And you know, she would feel my hair, she would touch me, and then it was like she has seen me. I thought it's just a first time thing, and I just walked away the second time. I walked out of the lecture hall thinking the lecture is over, I'm done with, and it upset her tremendously. She thought I was very offended, and in the next lecture she remained absent. I had to figure out why she was absent, what happened, because they are very regular. And her friends, who are also non-sighted, told me, "Oh, she thought you don't want to say hello to her anymore." So for 14 weeks, for the rest of the semester, after every lecture, I had Habiba seeing me. And it's something that really touches you. Then I also had a student called Tunria who insisted, she was failing in English, so they could have dropped out. You can drop out if you're not doing very well. She insisted that she'll finish this English module with Miss Amita. So I had an exactly opposite case. I had Ali who would not enter the classroom, and I had Tunria who would not drop English because I was teaching English. And this, because we are in a human profession and we want to connect and we want to impart something, is really great. How much time? Revelations down the semesters. I've been teaching blind students since 2011. It's all about human nature. It's about bonding and connecting with my students. Somehow it clicks very well with some, you lose some, just as the sighted students. But there's also bonding and connecting between the students. Or, as we had Mariam walking out of the class, sorry for the, it should be a single one. Literacy, education and empowerment. Now I want to come to the difficult part of it. While you're dealing with all this, you're also looking into the syllabus, finishing the portion, and the accessibility challenge, the braille books, the practical problems of having them in the class on time. Online materials seem to be a really good solution, using local contextually appropriate newspapers and in-house materials as teaching material help. But here the challenge is, while my non-sighted students will religiously do the homework, if I say look into the 5 headlines or just pick up one interesting article, they maintain a reading log and they look into the, you know, newspaper, but it's the sighted students who don't do it. They couldn't be bothered. Limitations of TV and radio, they said when it came to reading more, was they cannot see the repeats that often, so they preferred reading the newspaper online. And the huge boon of the smartphones and the internet, plus the Wi-Fi on campus, makes reading possible. I'm also very, very pleased to say that the English Language Center, the Sultan Qaboos University, donates the students with mobile phones, laptops and braille sends. So everything is provided, they just need to perform. Local national dailies, tabloids and online materials. I set up reading tasks throughout the semester. They maintain a vocabulary log and a reading log. End of the semester, I do an interview with them about how they felt on certain issues, national concerns. I want to come back, and I keep going back to my concern was, are they reading or listening? they are listening. Written and final exam complexity is where they are listening throughout. You have questions on reading skills, you have the listening skills, and then you have the writing skills. What are they doing? They are listening to the whole question paper, and they are listening to the reading and responding, and you have listening and speaking as well, where they are all the time doing listening. The question of balance, come to a conclusion. I have realized I go to the classroom to learn, not to teach anymore. I have learned so much in this classroom, it's unbelievable. I have realized while they have no sight, they do have vision, ambition, hope and motivation, more than the sighted students. I have realized that as an educator, we learn from them, and we have a long way to go to pave their way from being capable employees to becoming successful employers and be truly ready for life. About bonding and believing that the ultimate task I have is to prepare them for the great teacher life. I am no teacher, I do not teach. I learn how they learn. And I'm here to learn how to empower them better. And empowerment for me is providing optimal, contextual, situational facilities and support so that they can give their optimal best. To make them empowered is a challenge. These are my students, Amira and Habiba, and they have their own way of saying thank you and goodbye. They write my name on the board, and I wonder how their journeys will be and what more can be done for them. We'd like to end with a couple of things that I don't want to give them mere language. I want to help them find their voice. Education is not communication alone. It is finding your voice. It is from interdependence to independence that the journey I'm interested in. And not just the motivation to merely get marks, a degree and a job. I want to motivate them to make an impact in life, to bring about change for themselves. I would rather see them self-employed and keeping employees than just doing a service sector job like a TV or radio speaker. I don't want to go into the classroom with mere lesson plans. I want to go into the classroom with life plans so that they live better. When we are talking of disparities among races, nationalities, socio-economic, we tend to forget the physically challenged. My affirmation with what I want to end is, may I be able to teach more about life, and may life be a gentle teacher to them. Thank you. Questions or things you want to ask, or details or comments?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the powerful words and the powerful work that you're doing with inclusion. And I really applaud what you do in the classroom, because you're leading a very passionate movement right there. You're starting a powerful revolution, and I want to, congratulate you on that. Yes, it is important to include our students who are facing challenges physically and not just injustices with poverty and minorities. I really appreciate what you do, and I want to make sure that I learn from you and what you're doing, because I think we've had a connection right there. me working with immigrant minorities from Latin America, and that connection with your students, and they're learning English. So maybe we could, you know, create partnerships internationally to bring about more significant learning, also globally, and inclusion globally. Thank you.
And I want to go back to what was said yesterday about knowing how to learn, knowing to do, knowing to learn, knowing to do, knowing to be, and knowing to coexist, live together. So at each step, there are so many challenges. But in the end, you just have to say, I did my bit. Any other question?
Yeah, thank you very much for this sensational presentation. I think I've been converted more regarding children with special learning needs. My question is on, do you have any form of psychosocial support programs within the university to encourage these wonderful girls, these wonderful children to continue their education? And two, at least they are inspiring words currently. The world is looking at the issue of inclusion vis-a-vis specialized institutions. What is your view? Which one of the two would be the best? Inclusion?
To answer your first question, did I get it right? You're asking me about what social support we provide them. We have a Friends for Society club, and the blind students actually accomplish great events there. They conduct Braille workshops for us teachers, they teach Braille to us, and they also have their own little world where they read poems and they meet every week. We do special speaking classes in the evening because we have seen that they are very sharp in getting pronunciation right and speaking. So what we feel is employability will be very high as TV and radio announcers. We'll be able to get them there. And maybe they can open their own website, their own channels, and once you take this step, there's no stopping. We can make them unstoppable. The thing is, the university years should push towards independence. It's very difficult as a teacher to tell my blind students, go get your stuff on your own. I'm not bringing it to the class. The first 2 years we used to carry it to the class, and then me and my colleague realized that no, they have to move around alone, and they have to figure out which room to go to and get their material. It's like being cruel to be kind in the long run. They have to be independent. They have their white walking sticks, they have good transport, excellent transport is provided by the university. They just have to call the driver and they're picked up and dropped wherever they have to go. But yes, there is this moment of saying, how can I tell her I'll not get it for me? It's so easy for me to get it. But then you tell yourself, no, I'm doing this for her. That's the first thing about, how much social support. You don't want them to be dependent. You want them to be independent. We have a tongue twister competition in the class, and I tell them, of course you can do it. I want the tongue twister competition to be won by you, and they love it. They love to say, Betty has a bit of butter. And coming to your second question, when they are little, school education, I don't think can be mainstream because they have to learn a lot of subjects, and they have to learn Braille. They have to be really fluent in Braille or Braille things or whatever they are using. But in higher education, when they are above 18, above 19, it's high time that we stop being overprotective and start being more realistic of how we are going to introduce them to the real world. The 13th International English Language Teaching Conference at Oman had a special symposium of Learning with Disabilities unit. We are going to start a support unit which will look into all disabilities. And we are looking into making it as a networking community, just not the blind. You have so many other disabled students who can work as a community in itself, support each other in ways they can. And I feel that, to answer your question, there comes a time when even the mother has to let go of the child in the real world. We do the same. Thank you.
Only one quick question. Do these students learn both Arabic and English in Braille? Or are they still learning both languages?
No. By the time they reach us, if they are from the Nisba Institute, they are fluent in reading English and Arabic in Braille. But if they are not from that particular institute, if they are from one of the Muscat institutes where they are provided laptop, their Braille is not so fluent. So in fact, what I feel is if they are fluent in Braille, they are using a different sense. While if they are doing the laptop or the Braille sense, they are only listening all the time. And I don't know, but some of my students say listening is very tiring. To listen to 2,000 words is very tiring. They would rather have the Braille copy. So in fact, Amira, who is on the screen, would insist on her Braille copy. And we provided it, of course, but it meant, 2,000 words on Braille. It kept our technician busy for hours together to take it out. So it's a challenge.